Let freedom ring this afternoon at 2 with Sean Hannity, right before Joe Walsh at 5 on AM 560. The Answer.
Morning, Dan and Amy, and celebration of the U.S. Embassy opening in Jerusalem yesterday. Had, of course, Prime Minister Netanyahu and his wife, as well as a substantial U.S. delegation addressing the world against the backdrop of violence in Gaza. Jared Kushner was there.
Yeah.
And he gave some remarks.
Well, it's kind of nice to be here. We seem to have people of all ages. Some my own, others the
cut up, Jared.
Let's just say born at a more comfortable distance from the apocalypse.
Now, you shouldn't have done the old age joke with BB, but nonetheless, Jared's actual remarks, including this.
I am so proud to be here today in Jerusalem, the eternal heart of the Jewish people. While presidents before him have backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it.
If I didn't tell you that was the real Jared Kushner, I challenge you to distinguish Jared Kushner from Emo Phillips. I don't think you can do it.
President Trump delivered a message via satellite.
Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Yet for many years we failed to acknowledge the obvious, the plain reality that Israel's capital is Jerusalem.
And Prime Minister Netanyahu...
he looked elated. I mean, he
well,
was...
of course, and holding forth on the importance of the day.
Dear friends, what a glorious day. Remember this moment. This is history. President Trump, by recognizing history, you have made history.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Peter Roskam, Congressman from Illinois' 6th Congressional District in the Western Burbs. Peter, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Good to be with you.
I know you were a proponent of recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, the embassy opening there. What were your reflections on yesterday's events?
Yeah, I mean, to say it's a big day is an understatement. And I think that one of the things that is significant about this is that the clarity with which the United States is now communicating in foreign policy, particularly as it relates to Israel, is a good thing. And I think that the notion that Israel doesn't have to look over her shoulder now to say, well, is America with me? Is America with us? And so forth. And I think the ease with which the Israelis are able to interact now with others in the Middle East is a good thing. This is a good day. It's historic. It's significant. It's self-evident, but nevertheless, it was a very important move, I think, for the administration and for the Israelis, clearly.
And now other countries are going to be moving their embassies to Jerusalem, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, a shout out to little Guatemala, who is right at the head of the pack. And this is in tandem with some of the themes that we see coming from the administration, with Ambassador Haley in New York and how she's speaking clearly on Israel's behalf. And I think there's a lead sometimes that gets buried in the discussion of the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Oftentimes, the focal point is on how important the United States is for Israel, and that's true. But Israel is important for the United States. It's an incredibly important ally. It's the only country in the region that's a democracy. We have the shared value system and a shared history that is really significant. So this is it's a bilateral relationship that means a lot to both countries strategically.
CNN reporting this week that the generic ballot deficit for Republicans in Congress has winnowed substantially from just a month ago. It's down to basically the margin of error. So all of the hype from the D.C. press corps about the blue wave and this near certain takeover of the House may not come to pass, still a long time before November, but it's certainly in play. So the question is, how can Republicans capitalize on the seeming momentum that they have and that the president has? One way to do it is to address something that has been a bit of a sticking point among conservatives with Republicans in control of Congress, and that is spending. There's a $15 billion rescissions package that went to Capitol Hill last week with more to follow. After that $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill that disappointed a lot of conservatives, myself included, these rescissions packages, Congress going to take this up and at least try to reestablish some credibility on spending?
I think that there's the rescissions package may be more symbolism than substance. I mean, look, the thing that's driving the debt, the thing that's absolutely pushing things to a really significant point is our mandatory spending, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the debt, Social Security, and so forth. Domestic spending, or I should say discretionary spending, the amount of money that Congress actually appropriates, that 1/3 of the budget, is less than it was 8 years ago, which is an incredible accomplishment. So the rescissions package, yeah, I mean, it's worth looking at, but the notion that it's somehow, going to be the remedy is update Medicare, make this a program that makes sense in the long term. We did that for 6 years in the House. These were the budgets that got passed when Ryan was chairman of the Budget Committee. The challenge is that the last two American presidents, Barack Obama and Donald Trump, have basically told the public, Medicare is fine, don't worry about it. Medicare is not fine. It's a program that, if left to its own, will become insolvent before we hope that would happen, and I think that there's a lot of work to do. So I would look at the rescissions package as a little bit of symbolism.
Do you think you're going to be tackling that soon?
Yeah, I think it's going to be coming up. There's been some reporting yesterday that the rescissions package won't actually save $15 billion as purported, but it would only save about $1.5 billion. I mean, using the word only to modify billions, I get that, but it's not.
And a $4 trillion budget, it's not much, right?
Yeah.
You were an opponent of Boeing trying to do business with the lead state sponsor of terror in the world. That would be the Republic of Iran. So you have to be happy about what President Trump did with respect to withdrawing from that unholy Iran nuclear deal that the Obama administration inked.
Yeah, that was a terrible deal. The Obama administration just started chasing a legacy, and the mullahs in Iran knew that they were chasing a legacy, and I think really embarrassed the Obama administration by setting it up so that there wasn't anything that Obama wouldn't do to make that deal, to the point at which they put pallets of cash on an airplane and sent it over to the mullahs, which was just obtuse and ridiculous. So now the president comes in, President Trump comes in, fulfills the campaign promise that we're going to walk away from this deal. And the key to it, in my opinion, was the reassertion of crippling sanctions on the Iranians. And this is now bringing significant economic pressure on Iran. And that was the economic pressure that brought them to the table in the first place. And the weakness of the Iran deal was no deadline. It didn't have a sunset. The sunset clause was not well dealt with. It allowed for ballistic missile expansion and allowed them to continue to push their terror regime across the region. So I think stepping away, reallocating it, and the president said at the end of his remarks, we're willing to review this, but clearly the Iranians have to change their behavior, particularly on the terrorist side.
Well, speaking of sanctions on bad actors, how did you receive the announcement by President Trump over the weekend that he was going to intervene and negotiate to aid Chinese telecom company ZTE, which has been repeatedly found to be, a bad actor, stealing U.S. technology, violating World Trade Organization strictures, also selling telecom equipment to embargoed countries like Iran
and North
Korea,
yeah.
Syria, Cuba. So, but this is sort of a play as part of his larger deal making or attempt to deal with the Chinese. So what do you think? Is this something where you're going to give him wide berth to to see where he can get to with the Chinese in terms of what Larry Kudlow said? The long-term play is to reduce trade barriers on both sides, or is this concerning to you?
Well, it's concerning, but to Kudlow's point, the long-term play is to reduce the trade barriers on both sides. And there's another element here. The president's relationship with Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, is significant. And the way that so the Chinese are obviously playing an incredibly strategic role vis-a-vis North Korea because they're putting real pressure on Kim Jong-un and bringing him to the negotiating table. Without the Chinese help on the sanctions, that doesn't happen. So President Trump and the administration, and we need that. We need them at the table. But similarly, our relationship with China is incredibly complicated, and I think it's interesting that that President Trump is not saying. Well, let me put it this way: President Trump is communicating that President Xi is a good negotiator and trying to revisit the negotiation. And so in a pride-shame culture, which is the culture of China, he's trying not to shame him, but he's trying to induce a different response out of him. How this move over the weekend plays into that, I don't know off the top of my head, but any time there's big things going on with China, we're mindful to be wary of it, but to Kudlow's point, to be thinking of the long game.
And President Trump just tweeted, trade negotiations are continuing with China. They've been making hundreds of billions of dollars a year from the U.S. for many years. Stay tuned, exclamation point.
Okay, we will.
There you go.
We'll stay tuned then, Mr. President. All right, Peter Roskam, Congressman from Illinois' 6th. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.